Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be, and welcome to a post about the great physicists and an immature obsession with greatness that is being encouraged in our children. Looking back at history, one might think that the word greatness is synonymous with goodness and self-sacrifice. But I think that a better synonym is ruthless pursuit of fame and influence. Consider the top 10 greatest physicists on a poster for children. You have Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Max Planck, James Clerk Maxwell, Galileo Galilei, Niels Bohr, Richard Feynman, Werner Heisenberg, Paul Dirac, and Erwin Schrödinger. When I look at the list of top 10 greatest physicists, I see a lot of vindictive thieves and blinkered myopic thinkers. This is why I consider myself an ex-physicist. I don't want to be a member of a club that worships such men. Isaac Newton stole his conceptual understanding from Hooke and his mathematical understanding from Leibniz, and then dedicated the rest of his life to trashing their reputations. Albert Einstein took his wife's and professors' nuanced explanations and turned them into a horrific mashup of Minkowski's, Poincaré's, and Heaviside's understanding of space and time. Max Planck solved the ultraviolet catastrophe by quantizing energy according to ideas from Boltzmann, a man who killed himself because his colleagues treated him like a crackpot. James Clerk Maxwell took Faraday's understanding of electricity and magnetism and formalized it without emphasizing that his equations made critical approximations. Galileo Galilei stole from Giordano Bruno, and while Bruno was executed for heresy, Galileo got away with house arrest. He used the opportunity to write about his ideas. Niels Bohr worked as a postdoc for Rutherford and expanded his atomic model with a rather myopic approximation that confused the mathematical map and the territory. Richard Feynman was a man that Gell-Mann refused to work with after he took the fruits of one of their conversations and wrote the ideas up as his own. He essentially created a Rube Goldberg machine method of calculating simple scattering cross-sections. Werner Heisenberg took ideas from Emmy Noether and expressed them in his own private language without crediting her. The uncertainty principle is an obvious combination of Noether's theorem and Zeno's paradox. Paul Dirac started out great, but when they offered him the Nobel Prize, he gave up on defending a sensible interpretation of his work and succumbed to the pressure to tell everyone that his equation predicted a stupid concept called antimatter. Erwin Schrödinger got a wave equation named after him that had been invented more than 100 years earlier by a woman named Sophie Germain. He was unable to interpret the meaning of the equation for years after he invented it. Tell me again that these people were great men. This is a hall of shame. Yet their heroic lone genius images encourage young men to follow their examples, and this drive to achieve greatness will lead them to lie, cheat, obfuscate, and steal, just like their idols. What is funny is that while they do all of these underhanded things, they typically lie to themselves about what they've done, turning a blind eye to the sources of their insight in order to protect their fragile egos. Why is this? Is it that the closer you look, the less you see? Even some of the portraits of these famous men are lies. Newton didn't look anything like his famous portrait. He wasn't the flower-sniffing, rosy individual our elementary teachers portrayed him to be. Cold, calculating, cunning, and quick-tempered. He was not given to lightness of manner, nor did he show any capacity for self-irony. When angered, he became unbalanced, and, it must be said, vindictive and petty. When two other scientists, Robert Hooke and Gottfried Leibniz, offered criticism or competed with Newton for claim of the revolutionary ideas of gravity and calculus, Newton pursued personal vendettas against them. These grudges persisted even after Hooke and Leibniz were in their graves, with Newton trashing the reputations and discoveries of both Leibniz and Hooke, while elevating his own. This is why he is remembered and they are not. So even in the physical representations of these men, Newton has a portrait in which he has this very strong, manly face and a strong jaw, but in reality he was a rather frail, womanly-looking man. And for the sake of a heroic historical narrative, somebody invented a new look for him. Science marketing. In contrast to Newton's surly approach, Albert Einstein seemed to know how to flatter men who could help him, but he was most certainly a jerk to his wife, Mileva Marek. He copied her homework when they were in college together, and because they worked on a college project together when they were supposed to work independently, they got a bad grade for the project, which was mostly done by Mileva. He then got her pregnant after he'd been kicked out of their research program and she'd been accepted. He kept trying to be an academic and didn't get a real job when she got pregnant. He refused to marry her until long after she'd had his child, and his friend set him up in a real job at the patent office, essentially forcing him to do the right thing. He then put his name on a paper she'd written about relativity. He published her uncompleted thesis work on molecular dynamics as his own in order to get his PhD, and he didn't let anyone know that she had helped him write all of the papers of his miracle year. He used her to write his letters and lecture notes when he got his first professorship. He cheated on her with his secretary, his cousin, and his niece all at the same time. He insisted on moving to Berlin when she was much happier in Prague or Zurich because they were closer to her family and less embroiled in war. He started, as I mentioned, a lengthy affair with his cousin and her teenage daughter. He told his wife that he would only agree to remain married to her if she acted as his servant, tolerated his affairs, and told no one about her contributions to his career. He then made her beg for money. He had her children taken away from her when she got depressed during their divorce. He wrote cruel things about their sickly son, implying that if he was sick, maybe he wasn't worth keeping alive. He used their elder son as a shield to keep himself from getting drafted into the army during World War I. During their divorce, he signed a document promising to give her money if he won the Nobel Prize, but when he won, he didn't give her what he promised. Instead, he invested a lot of the winnings in the stock market right before it crashed. Once he had some career success, he referred to her as an employee he could not fire. After doing some research on all of these points and engaging in a widely circulated debate about Einstein, I was inspired to write a novel depicting their relationship. It is pretty good, and unlike any of the other fictional accounts of his life. A more academic depiction of his role in the history of physics can be found in a book that I'm posting in a space in Quora called Myths of Modern Physics, and I also have a paper copy available on Amazon. This account of the history of physics leads to the question, what should we do with young men who are drawn to an immature obsession with greatness? Does consolidating them within the physics establishment where they can fight with one another rather than bother everyone else neutralize the threat they pose to the social order? Or does this make their threat worse? Woe be it to any naive young person who wanders into their enclosure. I think we might be better off keeping these sorts of people within more balanced communities that don't enable their bad behavior, rather than locking them all away into communities that have proven to create explosive destructive products like bombs and credit default swaps. Technological advance has been accelerating for long enough, and slowing it down might be in order. Under these conditions, there might be more serial killers and basement bomb builders running around because they're frustrated by not having an outlet for their creative energies. But then we wouldn't have such large-scale disasters to worry about. Then again, these systems probably correct themselves as order breaks down on one length scale only to re-emerge at another. That's just how positive and negative entropy work. The issue of physicists and their obsession with greatness is related to prison rehabilitation programs. With the dangers of infection and noise during confinement, are we better off locking up a significant fraction of the population, or would exile as punishment be a better solution? After all, people change when they are placed in a new, more spacious environment, and if I knew I'd be sent off to live in a rural village in a foreign country if I committed a crime, I would be very careful to follow the law. If you would like to explore this apostatic physics perspective in more depth, I recommend my first nonfiction book. It's called Apostasizement. You can find it on Amazon. Thank you for watching. Please tune in for my next videos. Some weird lighting. Makes me look very chinny.